Okay, so what we've been looking at was how the industry was essentially under attack for a variety of different reasons. And what we saw, this is kind of a review, what we saw last time was that we had these theaters that were in essence, people are in essence complaining. They're saying, we think you guys are a trust. We think you're sitting around and you're fixing prices. You're using your economic clout. You're in essence getting together and you're restricting output. You're changing prices. You're putting other people out of business. And they're about to get ready for some antitrust lawsuits, right? People are mad about the censorship issue. People are mad about the content that's coming out of the movies. They're saying these movies are no good. It has objectionable moral material, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So what we saw here is that there are in essence these 8 different studios: Warner Brothers, RKO, 20th Century Fox, Paramount, MGM, Universal, Columbia, and United Artists. And they have about 95% of all of the revenues. And they only control about 20% of different theaters, though, right? So in July of 1938, Justice Department files suit alleging that in essence these 8 studios are a trust, right? They're engaging in unfair practice, and this case becomes known as Paramount No. 1. So what happens is that when you have a lawsuit, the federal government comes in and says, okay, we're going to sue you. The Federal Trade Commission or the Justice Department says, we think you're a trust, we're going to file a lawsuit against you, and that's in essence is going to go to court. In essence, what happens here is that in 1940, the studios settle by signing, in essence, a consent decree. What a consent decree basically says is that we're not admitting any wrongdoing, but we consent to these things, or we're going to submit to these conditions. We agree not to do these other things, blah, 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 right? So this consent decree says, okay, studios, you guys can keep your theaters if you don't seek to expand the number of theaters. So what you have, you can keep, but you can't go out and try to get any more. You can't have any more block booking for more than 5 movies. The movies that you can sell are in blocks of 5. You can no longer sell movies in these blocks of 20, right? What it also does is it essentially outlaws blind booking and full line forcing. In other words, you can't go out and say, watch these movies sight unseen, bid on them. You can't go out and say, you must buy these other products together, right? I mean, in essence, what you're doing here with full-line forcing and block booking, it's in essence tying, right? Tying is when you're selling one product. In order to get this one product, you have to buy this other product, right? So, in essence, it's widely believed that, in essence, the government caves in. The government's like, we don't want to really fight this. I mean, 1938, 1940, they have bigger fish to fry, right? There's Nazis and there's Japanese infiltrators that they have to weed out, or whatever it is that's going on at the time, right? I mean, in essence, there's a World War II, it's about to start. They got a lot on their plate. So in essence, they say, we're not going to fight this thing, right? But in order for the suit, for the consent decree to work, all of the studios have to sign it, and they'll have to sign it by 1942. Now, the independent ones, these are the people like the Walt Disneys and stuff, they're mad about this, because it got rid of the one thing that they wanted the most, like don't get rid of the blind booking, right? It got rid of that, and they still have the block booking. It's just in smaller blocks. Well, all that means is that now you can make those movies, and you just divide them up into smaller blocks. You don't have to make a block of 20 movies and have 2 good movies in there. You could have a block of 10 movies, 1 good movie in one block, 1 good movie in the other block. All right? It hasn't really changed things all that much. Right? So these 8 independents, they form the independent motion picture producer companies. You have people in there like Charlie Chaplin, Walt Disney, Orson Welles, Samuel Goldwyn. He's the G in MGM. And of course, MGM was one of the companies that was being sued. They had kicked him out of his own company. He was the one that founded it. So the society encourages the government to refile the antitrust case. Right? Same things that we have today with essentially people being agitators and saying, do this, don't do that. The 3 minor studios don't have any theaters, right? But what the consent decree says is you can't go out and get new theaters. Well, why should I sign for that? Why should I put myself into that place? Simply because I didn't get big enough, fast enough in order to buy these theaters, right? So they refused to sign it. Congress says, if you guys are going to sign this, we're going to reintroduce this anti-block booking bill in 1941. 1944, Department of Justice refiles the suit again. Right now it's called Paramount 2. It's called Paramount 2 because this is the second go-around, basically. Right? Studios say, hey, we need block booking to remain viable. They say, without this, we're going to go out of business. Right? During this time, 1946, Paramount has a profit of $39 million. Right? So this would be the equivalent today of people hearing like, oh, you know, Apple has profits of X number of millions and millions of dollars. People are saying, you've got the money, right? You can afford this. In 1946, lower court finds that block booking is illegal, but the studios don't have to divest themselves of their theaters, right? So at the first level in the federal government case, the court says block booking, this tying, which in essence what block booking is, this tying is illegal. You can't do that. But you don't have to sell your theaters. Government says, that's not good enough. This is vertical integration here, right? They're controlling this whole thing from start to finish. Government appeals to the Supreme Court. 1948, Department of Justice wins its suit and the studios are forced to divest themselves of their theaters. Okay? The studios vow to fight divestiture. They say, this is ridiculous. We're not getting rid of the theaters. Right? But you got Howard Hughes here. He's the head of RKO. States he's going to comply with Supreme Court rulings and begins selling studios, or begins selling theaters. And in essence, once one of them starts to do that, the whole United Front essentially begins to disappear. Right? And in essence, what happens is that they don't really want this renegotiated again at the suit level, right? Because in essence, what they have begun to do is they have begun to divest themselves of their theaters so they don't have to divest themselves of television. Because at the same time that they're buying theaters like they used to own in the 20s and 30s and the 40s, now they've gotten to the point where they're starting to buy television studios. And they think if this thing gets refiled again, goes to the Supreme Court again, maybe we have to lose everything and maybe we're just Paramount Studios making movies and that's it. All right? So they can see on the horizon that television is coming, the industry is changing, and we're going to have to do something different. All right? This should be the end of our slideshow. All right? So what they agree to, of course, they can also keep their Canadian and foreign theaters. Of course, these aren't subject to U.S. law. So if you go to parts of Europe or Canada, some of those theaters that you're visiting are actually owned by Paramount or Warner Brothers or United Artists or whomever. So since we're on television, let's kind of stick with this television model right here. So there's lots of different ways that we can go, and there's lots of different things we want to look at, but since we just got finished talking about television, let's talk about television. So up until the 50s, basically studios had ignored TV. All right. And they tried to do this in a couple of different ways. The first one was to refuse products. They said, we're not going to allow our stuff to be shown on television. All right. So TV studios / stations, they can't show movies and can't use the production equipment. Right? In other words, you can't go out and use the studio, the production area at Paramount to make a television program. You can't do that. The second thing they try to do is to differentiate their product. Right? So, in essence, they closed the newsreel division. People are getting their news from television now and newspapers a whole lot more than they used to. They focus on things like 3D movies, smell-o-vision. You know what smell-o-vision is? When you're watching the movie, and if they're in an orange grove, then they've got scents coming out that have, you can smell oranges. It's that sort of thing, right? Changing the formats to 4:3, basically what we would call letterbox today, etc. Disney, on the other hand, embraces television. And in fact, they actually signed a 7-year deal with a network. You guys know which network it was? ABC, right? The American Broadcasting Company. And in essence, what they do is they're going to have a weekly hour program called Disneyland. All right. In other words, they're using television to promote their product. So they have this hour-long program that is, in essence, an hour-long commercial for the happiest place on earth, right? Disneyland in Anaheim, California. And they've got all kinds of stuff in there where you can see rides, and they have little skits and shows and movies and all that kind of stuff. So 1948, TV penetration is about 1 million homes. All right, 1962, TV penetration is 55 million homes. Right, so 48, 58, 14, 15 years. We've gone from basically 1 million homes. Television's not really that big of an issue. It's kind of a novelty still, to where basically almost everyone's got a television. And once again, why pay for movies if you can watch them for free on television? During this time period, studios lose basically half of their audience. Right? So it's a big deal. They have to adapt. There's no way they can't. They continue on the same format that they're going to, they will drive themselves right out of business. Right? The exact same thing happening today in movies and television and cable, all that other stuff. It's the same thing. The technology is changing. The technology is becoming more widespread, right? You have to adopt. You can't continue to do things the old way. If you do, you're going to go out of business. So they essentially changed their methods, and they now adopt and embrace television. And one of the ways that they embrace that, it's especially profitable due to an FCC regulation called Fencin, right? And what this rule is called is actually the financial interest and syndication rule. What this rule says is that TV networks, but not movie studios, can't have a financial interest in creating TV programming and then selling it in syndication. Right, so we know what syndication is, right? Syndication is when, you know, you've got the rights to show these programs. So let's translate this into English, right? So we have television stations here locally, right? We've got an ABC affiliate, we've got an NBC affiliate, we've got a CBS affiliate. These guys are locally owned, right? They're not owned by the ABC Corporation, the CBS Corporation, the NBC Corporation. They're affiliates. It's a lot like when you open up a restaurant, right? And that is called, I'm really tired, so I can't think of what it's called. Do what? Franchise. It's essentially the same thing as like a franchise. And in essence, what it says is that here's ABC up here, up top, the ABC Corporation can't create programming for syndication. They can't say, okay, we're creating this program, and by definition, you must show this, right? McDonald's Corporation can do that. McDonald's Corporation can say, if you want the McDonald's name, you have to sell these types of hamburgers in this type of format. You must charge these prices. Your restaurant must look like this. But this rule is different. It says the TV network, so the ABC network, the NBC network, the CBS network, can't create programming that's going to be used in syndication. So it doesn't make sense for the ABC network to create programs that they can't force other people to buy, the local affiliates in Springfield or Joplin or Kansas City or LA or wherever, right? They can make a program. They can do that if they want to, but they can't syndicate it, right? They can't say you must show this on these. The networks, or the movie studios, though, they can. They can create programming. That program can be used in syndication. Okay? That's why when you have things like, and I'm just go to any of those old shows that you want. It doesn't really, say Star Trek. This was created by Paramount Studios. It's the studio creating the show, right? And I don't know what network it showed on when it came on. I'll just make up maybe it was NBC. I don't know. I don't remember. It's not NBC creating the program. It's on television. It's the movie studio creating the program. This is the same studio that would also make other movies, like whatever that shows up in the typical movie theaters that you see. Okay? So let's think about what this rule says. The Fencin Rule says all of the networks, all of these affiliates, if they want programming, they can't get it from these guys. They can only get it from us. The movie studios. So in essence, in order for them to show something, they've got to come to us for the product. It's a great rule, right? There's no wonder the movie studios started loving television, right? Television essentially guarantees them product. It guarantees them a market. Somebody's going to buy their stuff. So these networks right here, it's just simply not profitable to create their own programming. It in essence gets farmed out. It gets farmed out to the movie studios. So we have the studios here. Become increasingly willing to accept per episode licensing fees. And these licensing fees can be slightly below production costs. And that's okay, because we can show it again and again and again and again and again. Right? The production cost is almost like a fixed cost per se. The variable cost is very, very small. So you could have an episode of ER. This is the hospital drama in Chicago that starred George Clooney. Right? This guy would have a per episode licensing fee of, say, $1.5 million. Right? So whoever, and I don't remember who showed ER. Like I said, I don't watch television anymore. But whoever was showing ER, that network is paying $1.5 million. And they'll charge these affiliates some amount of money, however it is, maybe $20,000, whatever it is. Right? And the studio that's making this, not the television company, the studio, they're saying, oh, well, this episode cost us, I'm making up a number, $2 million to make. We'll sell it to you for $1.5 million because we know that we can sell that episode again and again and again and again and again and again. We can sell that episode on VHS tape. We can sell that episode on DVD. We can sell that episode on streaming services in the future. So you had movie studios like Sony. They had 350 different TV series. All right, so they had things like Fantasy Island, Starsky and Hutch, right, which they made a movie of, Charlie's Angels, All in the Family. It's Archie Bunker. Blah, 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 blah. All right. And of course, you can have spin-offs. All in the Family has a spin-off, and that's the Jeffersons. Right? The Jeffersons has a spin-off. That's 227. I mean, these things just keep creating themselves. You can do all kinds of stuff with them. So in essence, you get to the point here where the studios are having 2/3 of their revenue is coming from television, not from the movies that they're showing in the movie theater that you pay to go see, like the Star Wars or whatever's showing. I don't even know what's showing. Blade Runner, whatever. What they want to do is they want to maximize and use these TV studios, which they own to a large degree, to help differentiate these windows. So we've got our windows for the movies that we're making. All right. So our first window, here we're going to make some movie, whatever it is, The Matrix, right? So I know that's old for you guys. It's not that old for me. So we have our first window, right? We've got these different sets of windows. These could be things like pay-per-view. Right? Once this thing is done being shown in the movies, once we've milked it for all that we can at the theater, now we're going to move to these different windows, right? We're going to have things like pay-per-view. We can have things like subscription television. Right? So maybe this is our second window. Right? And this guy was usually right after the film leaves. Right? So we can have our subscription TV. This is our HBOs. All right, actually owned by Time Warner. Or our Showtime. That was owned by Viacom. The Stars, which is owned by Liberty Media, which is actually owned by News Corp. And News Corp is another name for, you guys know? 20th Century Fox. Right. As a matter of fact, they actually don't, they use the name 20th Century Fox now, and actually don't even use the name 20th Century anymore. Just for the movies that you would see in the theaters. News Corp is actually the name of the company. So this window could last for a while, maybe up to a year. And you could get all kinds of licensing fees from this. So these licensing fees here, you know, say approximately $13 million per film. Kind of depends on the film for unlimited viewing, all right? So you show it on HBO for 7 months. It shows however many times HBO wants to show it, doesn't really matter. They can show it as many times as they want to. And the studio, HBO, is paying $13 million for that. Of course, if the movie's owned by Time Warner, then one branch of Time Warner is paying the other branch of Time Warner. Okay. But once again, that kind of stuff helps keep the movie itself from making money. Right? Oh, we got to pay $13 million for the licensing fees. Gee, the cost of the movie just went up by $13 million bucks, despite the fact it's going from one part of the company to the other part of the company. Then you could have, say, network television. Now we're going to show it on the ABCs, NBCs, CBSs. Here you could have various fees anywhere from, say, 20 to 45 million. For 3 bytes, right? 3 bytes being you can show this movie 3 times anytime you want to. You have this window, whatever it is, 18 months, 12 months, whatever. It's going to vary from movie to movie, contract to contract. Okay, we're going to pay you $20 million to show this movie 3 times over the next 18 months. You can show it whenever you want to. Right? Then you could go to the cable network stations. Here you're looking at prices of around $5 million per film. And you could also have your locally owned affiliates buying the films. All right. And these might be only a few $1,000s. Depending upon, of course, the size of your market and everything else. Right. If KY3 was to try to show Brokeback Mountain in Springfield, Missouri, that movie's not going to go over very well, right? It's just not. So maybe if they want to show that movie, they pay $3,000. Whereas a same market size as Springfield in California or Oregon or Washington State, maybe they could sell it for, I'm making up a number, right? $50,000 or whatever it is. Depends upon your local market. And the foreign markets are really lucrative too, because in the foreign markets, we don't have any of these pesky antitrust laws to deal with. So for our foreign markets, we can continue to sell these movies in blocks. Right? And so in essence, we still have these blocks here of about 6 to 10 blocks. 6 to 10 movies per block is what I meant to say. Right? And these can be sold to essentially foreign TV stations. So I spent my sabbatical last spring in Germany watching television. It's all American movies. They're dubbed into German, but it's all American movies, right? So here's some foreign TV station in Germany showing this movie, whatever it is, some movie in the US from the 1970s. It's dubbed into German. And that movie was part of a block of 6 to 10 other movies that station had to buy. And in essence, the advantage of selling these movies in blocks, of course, is that they can, in essence, shift revenue between these movies. So we can shift revenue from movies that are in the black to movies in the red. All right? So we can take a Star Wars, we can sell this in a block, along with 2 other movies, right? Let's say dumb movie, really dumb movie, waste of time, and I want my 2 hours of life back. Right? This guy right here, obviously making tons of money. All right? Star Wars has done very, very well for 20th Century Fox. And in essence, what they can do is they can say, oh, okay, we want to sell this block of movies to some studio in Britain or Japan or Germany or France or wherever. And they're going to make some amount of money from this block. I'm making up a number. $2 million. And in essence, what they can do is they can say, oh, okay, well, we've got this $2 million in revenue. We don't want to assign all that revenue to this guy. We want to assign it to these guys down here, right, which are way below into the red, right? We want to take the money that's going towards the prop, because that's what they're doing. They're essentially buying Star Wars, and they got to show all these other movies, right? And in essence, we can shift this revenue from this guy down to these other guys, which makes the revenue from Star Wars continue to appear smaller than what it actually is. But here, the movie where when you're done, you're like, crap, I want my 2 hours of life back. Hey, we're going to assign $1 million worth of revenue to that guy, and we'll assign $20,000 up here to Star Wars and various amounts up here to these other guys, right? Because once again, once Star Wars becomes profitable, we've got that net royalties that we have to pay to all of those people that are in the movie. We don't want to do that. We don't want to pay them anything. We want to keep the money for ourselves. So all of this programming fees, all of this stuff, right, can be used in all kinds of different ways. So for example, we have our Gone in 60 Seconds. This is with Nicolas Cage, right? Pay TV, paid Disney $18 million to show the movie for 2 years. So what Disney did was they said, okay, we want to set aside $2.7 million for residuals. Those are royalties. And you're going to have $149,000 in taxes, insurance. You've got this $15,351,000 profit that now, in essence, we're going to have to find a way to get rid of. Well, how can we get rid of that? We can do that in all kinds of different ways. Sell that in a block, all kinds of things like that to make that $15 million as small as it can possibly be. We'll see more about how we do this later on. But in essence, Fencin was so successful. All right, this financial syndication rule was so successful that when this guy was lifted in 1995, now the networks, the ABC, CBS, NBC networks are free to create programming, but they don't. They continue to buy their programming from the movie studios. And in fact, in essence, what the movie studios did was to merge with a lot of the television studios. So for example, you have Disney buys ABC, right? You've got Time Warner creates the Warner Brothers network. I don't know that anybody watches anything on that. You have Viacom buys CBS. You have General Electric merges with Universal Studios to buy NBC. All of these guys are co-owned. Okay, we'll pick it up from here on Friday.